People often believe that becoming attractive in conversation is about asking the perfect questions. They think if they ask enough about her hobbies, her job, her favorite movies, or where she grew up, they will somehow create a meaningful connection. Yet most conversations fail for one simple reason. They become interviews instead of experiences. Attraction is rarely built through collecting information. It is built through emotion, mystery, confidence, and presence. Most people believe that the best way to talk to a woman is to keep asking questions. They assume that curiosity alone creates attraction, so they move from one question to the next. Where are you from? What do you do? What are your hobbies? Before long, the conversation feels less like a natural interaction and more like a job interview. The problem is not that questions are bad. The problem is that when questions become your only strategy, they reveal uncertainty. They suggest you are searching for something to say instead of creating an emotional experience. The most memorable conversations are rarely built on endless questions. They are built on emotional tension, confidence, and the ability to make another person feel something. If every man asks the same predictable questions, then every conversation becomes forgettable. What separates you is not the information you collect, but the atmosphere you create. Instead of immediately asking about her life, make an observation. Notice the energy she brings into the room, the way she reacts to people, or the confidence she carries. Observations are powerful because they show awareness rather than dependence. They demonstrate that you are paying attention instead of following a script. This instantly changes the dynamic. She no longer feels like she is being interviewed. She feels like she is being seen. That difference is enormous. Human beings naturally crave recognition more than interrogation. An observation also invites a conversation without demanding one. She can agree, disagree, laugh, or expand on it. The exchange feels effortless because it grows naturally instead of being forced through a sequence of prepared questions. Your goal is not to gather facts. Your goal is to create curiosity. Curiosity is born when you speak with confidence, share genuine thoughts, and allow the conversation to unfold without rushing. When you stop treating conversation like an information hunt, your presence becomes more relaxed. People sense that calmness immediately. They feel less pressure and become more willing to invest in the interaction themselves. Attraction begins when someone enjoys how they feel around you, not because you successfully completed a list of questions. The strongest communicators understand that words are only part of the message. Your confidence, your timing, your observations, and your ability to stay present speak louder than any perfectly prepared question ever could. Most people spend their conversations trying to discover information, but the truly magnetic person focuses on creating emotion. This is why speaking through observations is far more powerful than relying on endless questions. Questions often place the responsibility for keeping the conversation alive on the other person. Observations, however, invite connection without pressure. They show that you are present, aware, and capable of noticing details that others overlook. When you make an honest observation, you reveal confidence because you are willing to express your own perspective instead of hiding behind a series of safe questions. This immediately changes the energy of the interaction. Imagine noticing the excitement in her voice when she talks about a certain topic or commenting on the calm confidence she carries rather than asking another predictable question. Such statements create a natural opening for conversation because they make the other person feel understood instead of examined. People rarely remember someone who simply asked about their job or favorite hobby. They remember the person who noticed something meaningful about them that everyone else ignored. That feeling of being genuinely seen creates a lasting impression. It also encourages the other person to speak more freely because they no longer feel trapped in a routine exchange. Observations naturally lead to stories, opinions, laughter, and deeper conversations without forcing the interaction. They also reveal your own personality because every observation reflects how you see the world. This is what makes conversations memorable. Two people connect through shared perspectives, not through collecting facts about each other. When you confidently express what you notice, you invite the other person into your world instead of chasing entry into theirs. This balance creates mutual interest rather than one-sided effort. The conversation begins to flow because both people are contributing thoughts instead of following a rigid question and answer pattern. At the same time, your tone and delivery matter just as much as your words. Speak slowly, maintain relaxed body language, and allow your observations to settle before saying something else. Confidence is often communicated through patience. You do not need to rush to fill every silence. A brief pause after an observation gives the other person space to respond naturally. These pauses create anticipation instead of awkwardness when you remain comfortable. The goal is never to impress with clever lines, but to create an atmosphere where genuine interaction can happen. When your words come from awareness instead of anxiety, people instinctively feel the difference. They become more engaged because the conversation feels authentic, spontaneous, and emotionally alive rather than rehearsed or predictable. That is the quiet advantage of leading with observations instead of depending on endless questions. One of the greatest mistakes people make in conversation is revealing either too much or too little about themselves. Some speak endlessly, hoping their stories will impress. Others remain almost completely silent, believing mystery comes from saying as little as possible. Neither approach creates genuine attraction. Real mystery is created by revealing yourself gradually. It is the art of allowing another person to discover you piece by piece instead of presenting your entire life within the first few minutes. Human nature values what unfolds over time. When everything is immediately available, curiosity disappears. This is why the most engaging conversations are not built on trying to prove your worth, but on allowing interest to develop naturally. Instead of answering every question with a long explanation, share enough to spark curiosity and then move forward. Mention an interesting experience without explaining every detail. Refer to a lesson you learned without immediately giving the entire story. Leave room for imagination because imagination is one of the strongest forces behind attraction. When people become curious, they begin asking their own questions. That changes the balance of the conversation. Instead of chasing attention, you inspire it. At the same time, never confuse mystery with being cold or emotionally distant. Warmth and openness are essential, but they should be balanced with restraint. Smile naturally, listen carefully, and respond with sincerity while avoiding the urge to overshare. Confidence is shown by trusting that you do not need to explain everything about yourself to earn someone's interest. Another important principle is to speak from experience rather than from performance. Tell stories that reveal your values instead of trying to make yourself appear extraordinary. A simple story told with honesty often has more impact than an exaggerated tale meant to impress. Authentic experiences create emotional connection because they feel real. They allow the other person to see your character without you having to describe it directly. This gradual unfolding also creates rhythm within the conversation. Each exchange becomes another opportunity for discovery. The interaction feels dynamic because neither person knows exactly what will come next. Curiosity grows through unanswered possibilities, not through complete certainty. The more comfortable you become with allowing silence, pauses, and incomplete explanations, the more naturally people lean into the conversation. They begin investing their own energy because they want to know more. Attraction is strongest when both people are actively participating in discovering one another. You do not need to advertise every achievement, every opinion, or every detail of your past. Your confidence should come from knowing that your presence is enough. When you reveal yourself slowly, speak with honesty, and leave space for curiosity to grow, conversations become more memorable, more engaging, and far more emotionally compelling than those driven by the constant need to explain or impress. Silence is one of the most misunderstood forms of communication. Many people fear it because they believe every quiet moment signals failure. The instant a pause appears, they rush to fill it with another question, another story, or another joke. In doing so, they unintentionally communicate nervousness. A person who cannot tolerate silence often reveals a hidden need for approval. On the other hand, someone who remains calm during a pause projects confidence without saying a single word. This is why mastering silence is one of the strongest social skills you can develop. When you stop treating every moment of quiet as a problem, you create space for the other person to think, feel, and naturally contribute. Conversations become balanced because both people have room to participate. Instead of carrying the entire interaction on your shoulders, you allow the exchange to unfold on its own. People are often more willing to open up after a brief silence than after a rapid series of questions. Silence creates anticipation. It encourages reflection. It gives your words greater weight because they are not buried beneath constant talking. Imagine making a thoughtful observation and then simply waiting. That pause shows confidence. It demonstrates that you trust your words enough not to immediately explain or defend them. Most people never experience this kind of communication because they have been conditioned to believe that speaking more means connecting more. In reality, meaningful conversations often contain moments where nothing is said at all. Those moments allow emotions to settle and curiosity to grow. Silence also encourages the other person to invest in the conversation. When you stop trying to entertain every second, they naturally begin filling the space with their own thoughts, experiences, and stories. This creates emotional investment because people value conversations they actively help build. If you are always speaking, they become passive listeners. If you leave room for them, they become engaged participants. Your body language during silence matters just as much as your words. Maintain relaxed eye contact, a calm expression, and comfortable posture. These signals communicate security. Looking away nervously or fidgeting destroys the effect because it suggests discomfort. Confidence is often communicated through stillness rather than movement. Another advantage of silence is that it allows you to think before responding. Instead of reacting impulsively, you choose your words with intention. Thoughtful responses always carry more impact than rushed ones. The goal is not to become silent or mysterious for the sake of appearing interesting. The goal is to become comfortable enough with yourself that silence no longer feels threatening. When you master that comfort, every conversation changes. People begin to feel your presence rather than simply hear your words. They remember the calmness you brought into the interaction, and that quiet confidence leaves a deeper impression than endless talking ever could. One of the greatest misconceptions about conversation is that people remember the exact words you said. In reality, they remember the emotional experience you created. Long after the details of a discussion have faded, the feeling remains. This is why truly memorable conversations are not built on exchanging facts, but on creating emotions. A person may forget where you grew up, what your job is, or the stories you shared, but they will remember whether they felt comfortable, excited, inspired, understood, or energized in your presence. That emotional memory is what draws people back. If your only goal is to impress with knowledge, intelligence, or achievements, the conversation quickly becomes predictable. However, when your goal is to create a positive emotional atmosphere, every interaction becomes more meaningful. This begins with your attitude. Speak with genuine enthusiasm about ideas that interest you instead of trying to say what you think the other person wants to hear. Passion is naturally attractive because emotions are contagious. When you are genuinely engaged, your energy encourages the other person to become engaged as well. Storytelling is one of the most powerful ways to create emotion. A simple story with honesty, humor, or an unexpected lesson often has a greater impact than a list of accomplishments. Stories allow people to imagine themselves in the moment. They create pictures in the mind, and those pictures are remembered far longer than isolated facts. Another important element is emotional variety. A conversation should not feel flat or repetitive. Move naturally between lighthearted moments, thoughtful reflections, playful teasing, and sincere observations. These emotional shifts keep the interaction alive because they mirror the rhythm of real life. Confidence also plays a major role in creating memorable conversations. Confident people are not obsessed with saying the perfect thing. They focus on being fully present. They listen without rushing, speak with intention, and remain relaxed even when the conversation slows down. That calm presence makes others feel comfortable. People instinctively trust someone who appears emotionally grounded. It is equally important to avoid forcing attraction or connection. Genuine chemistry cannot be manufactured through rehearsed lines or manipulative techniques. It grows when two people enjoy sharing the same emotional space. Instead of constantly seeking approval, concentrate on expressing your authentic thoughts with respect and composure. Allow your personality to emerge naturally rather than trying to perform. The conversations people remember most are those that made them feel seen, understood, and emotionally alive. When someone leaves your presence feeling happier, calmer, more curious, or more confident than before, they begin to associate those emotions with you. That is the true secret behind unforgettable conversations. They are never about saying more. They are about creating feelings that continue to exist long after the final words have been spoken. The most unforgettable conversations are not remembered because every sentence was clever or every joke landed perfectly. They are remembered because they left an emotional imprint. People rarely replay an entire conversation in their minds. Instead, they remember how they felt while speaking with you. This is why your ultimate goal should never be to exchange information or prove your intelligence. Your goal is to create an experience that stays with someone long after the conversation has ended. Every interaction should leave the other person feeling more energized, more understood, more curious, or more inspired than they did before it began. That emotional impact is what makes you memorable. Many people believe that being interesting means talking constantly, sharing impressive achievements, or displaying endless knowledge. In reality, being memorable comes from creating moments that feel genuine. Speak about ideas that excite you, experiences that shaped your perspective, or lessons you learned through real life rather than trying to impress with perfect stories. Authenticity carries a quiet strength because people instinctively recognize when someone is speaking from experience instead of performance. You do not have to exaggerate your successes or manufacture mystery. Simply sharing honest thoughts with confidence creates far more influence than pretending to be someone you are not. One of the strongest ways to make a conversation memorable is through storytelling. Stories create emotion because they allow people to imagine themselves inside the experience. A well-told story does not need dramatic events to capture attention. Even a simple moment can become powerful if it contains emotion, humor, surprise, or a meaningful insight. Instead of listing facts about yourself, let your stories reveal your values, your mindset, and your character. This allows the other person to discover who you are naturally. People trust discoveries they make themselves more than claims you make about yourself. Your emotional state influences every conversation more than your vocabulary ever will. If you are calm, present, and comfortable, those emotions become contagious. If you appear anxious, rushed, or desperate to be liked, those feelings also spread. Human beings constantly respond to emotional energy, often without realizing it. This is why self-control is one of the most attractive qualities a person can possess. Staying relaxed under pressure communicates confidence without requiring you to announce it. Emotional stability makes people feel safe, and safety creates openness. Another important principle is learning to appreciate pauses. Silence is not the enemy of conversation. It is part of its rhythm. A brief pause after making a thoughtful observation allows your words to settle. It gives the other person time to reflect and respond naturally. Those who rush to eliminate every moment of silence often weaken the impact of what they say. Confident communicators understand that not every second must be filled with words. Sometimes a smile, steady eye contact, and a comfortable pause communicate more than an entire paragraph. Being memorable also requires generosity in the way you communicate. Instead of trying to dominate the interaction, create space for the other person to express themselves. Listen with genuine attention rather than preparing your next response while they are still speaking. Notice the emotions behind their words, not just the information they share. When people feel truly heard, they naturally become more engaged. They begin associating your presence with comfort and understanding rather than pressure or judgment. This emotional connection is far stronger than any clever conversation technique. Finally, remember that attraction and connection cannot be forced. They develop naturally when two people enjoy the experience of talking to one another. Stop worrying about saying the perfect line or following a rigid formula. Focus instead on bringing calm confidence, honest observations, thoughtful stories, and positive emotional energy into every interaction. When someone leaves your company feeling better than when they arrived, they will remember you. They may forget your exact words, but they will remember the confidence you projected, the emotions you awakened, and the atmosphere you created. That is what transforms an ordinary conversation into one that lingers in the mind long after it has ended.